Greetings, housemates, and welcome back to another Learn to Play Total War Warhammer video. I am Phwop, and we're going to be talking about the greenskins in more depth in this episode. So, faction mechanics, let's start with that. Can only capture territory belonging to dwarves or other greenskin factions, so expect to fight dwarves. It's going to be tough because they have really heavy armor on almost all their units, and you're going to have to look through your roster of units for armor piercing because it's not readily available on everything. Fightiness. Armies have a fightiness rating which rises when fighting, and rating falls when inactive and as a result of being defeated. This means that positioning your armies near enemies is going to be necessary. You're going to need to be able to pick fights regularly. That's an important thing to know and keep in mind, is an army caught deep within friendly territory actually may end up with low fightiness, causing attrition, and won't be able to have the high fightiness required to spawn allied WA armies, which can be sent against the enemies or follow you around, and are a really interesting mechanic. The armies they're kind of powerful early game armies. All the time, and they never spawn. They can be a little more experienced depending on where you are in the game, but otherwise they never really get that much better. Every WoW army is the same. Best used early on in the game, a good reason to recruit all those goblins. Let's talk about the underway. Just as good for the dwarves, for you as it is for the dwarves. This allows you to hop around at any point on the map, but it's especially good for moving through and over, or under, that is, mountains, as it lets you quickly move through that terrain, which generally has a really high mobility penalty for your armies. Definitely the fastest way to move around in the mountains. Also lets you pull some nice tricky maneuvers where you jump over a mountain range that humans and vampires and chaos cannot. Does come with the risk of interception. If you're intercepted, you cannot retreat, but neither can the enemy, which is a big deal for crushing those dwarven armies that try and sneak past you, or possibly crushing the dwarven armies that intercept you when they don't have a chance, because sometimes the AI does that. Playstyle, large unit sizes. That means that your units get a lot of attacks and can kind of concave around the enemy a bit better, but it also means that they lose power. That AoE attacks are especially effective. Cheap unit upkeep. This is amazing. Lets you host a large number of armies, which is great because you actually kind of have to be always on the defense. Or always on the offense. That is your defense, because you can't actually host armies without their fightiness dropping back in home territory. You have to be fighting someone, or your armies will get pissed and eat each other. Bonus to income derived from raiding and sacking. You're real good at raiding and sacking, and you can make a ton of money that way, and you should. It'll let you drive your simple but powerful infrastructure to the top, or max it out, which will provide you with a surprisingly large amount of money. Goblin units have brittle leadership. They do, but they help you trigger WAs. So recruit a bunch of goblins. You need at least 17 units to trigger a WA. They're a great low upkeep way to get your fightiness up. You don't even since you can raid to raise your fightiness, you don't necessarily have to engage anyone with those weak goblin units. You just have to have 17 units, and then that wall will pop up and it will double your fighting strength or more at the beginning of the game. Limited tech tree. This is true, but not really a giant problem for you, as the techs are all pretty good. Cannot trade. That's a problem, but I think they made up for it with the economic strength and simplicity in your buildings. Limited economic buildings, true, but not much of a problem. What they mean here mostly is that you can't take advantage of regional specials the way most people do. You'll either get money, straight up money, like instead of gems, you'll get a gold mine because you can't trade. So all the tradable luxury type resources, you'll get straight up cash from lootens. And all of the like furs or beasts or pastures or whatever will actually give you recruitment bonuses like extra experience for your boar boys and reduced recruitment costs, stuff like that. All right, let's talk about the heroes. You have Azag the Slaughterer and Grimgor Ironhide. Grimgor is the faction leader, and I think the best choice for starting your campaign. Campaign movement range plus 5% for all characters, that is lords and heroes, which is awesome. Especially because positioning yourself near enemies or in their territory so that you can raid is so important for fightiness. As well as getting armies quickly to the next fight. It's just a big deal for orcs. Positioning is key. And upkeep reduction for black orcs and biggins units. There aren't that many ways to reduce upkeep for orcs. There's one set of campaign skills, or one skilled sync in the campaign line, and that's it. There's no research that reduces upkeep, but their upkeep's already pretty small. But black orcs are your top tier infantry, and biggins are kind of are as well. So 10% reduced upkeep for the best infantry across all of your armies, pretty good. Azag the Slaughterer, income for sacking settlements plus 10%. That is a big deal, or at least that will pay off quite a bit. But it's only a couple thousand in cash, and the amount of money you can make is pretty huge from sacking settlements. So I don't think you'll really find this to be a massive benefit. It's nice to have, but it's not quite as good as 5% movement range. And diplomatic relations plus 10 with undead, for the most part, I found I didn't have to be friendly with the undead by the time I actually got to them. So I don't know that that's really all that important. Plus, you'll eventually unlock Azag the Slaughterer, his legendary lord, through the game anyway. So I suggest Grimgor Ironhide. He also starts off with better starting units. 1 unit of Black Orcs, 1 Doomdiver Catapult, which you can't get for a long time with Azag, because you have to actually research an army. Or there's a special research you need to actually unlock that unit. And the Orc Boar Boy Shock Cavalry, really good. Fairly heavily armored, 55 armor, armor piercing, attacks, excellent charge bonus, good against dwarves. I think his starting units are just really incredibly powerful. He himself also comes with +6 leadership for Black Orcs. Not one of the units that really needs it, but it means his Black Orcs are going to be extra buff. Plus the Immortals banner, which is unavailable except through recruiting Grimgor. 1 unit of Black Orcs gets +5 armor, +6 melee defense, and +10% additional leadership. So this pretty boss unit of Black Orcs. When we look at the skills here, he's got a really nice weapon. Anti-large, reduction in vampiric and chaos corruption wherever he is. Increases his damage by 58% total. You'll see down there once every 2 minutes or so. So long cooldown, powerful damage bonus, and some melee attack to make sure he lands those. And then his blood forged armor, pretty sick. Ward save, of course, is 50% damage reduction of all types. Melee defense, armor, all to the good. Hatred plus 15% extra weapon damage, and he has up to +30% weapon damage twice in his character skills section. So he can get up to 75% increased weapon damage, and then on top of that, he increases it by another almost 60%, and his damage becomes absolutely insane. For that reason, I suggest you go with the damage buffs and melee attack. I would even max out Deadly Blade here, as he does get twice as much as most people do. Extra health is always good, but he gets half as much bonus health as most characters do. So wah. And that +5 melee attack right there, really important. Foe Seeker is great. Wah is really good. Everyone within 40 meters of him gets +34 melee attack and +8 leadership. That 34 melee attack, that's as much melee attack as your Black Orcs have. So that will double up the melee attack of your best units. It's almost like it's an insane amount of melee attack for the Orc units, especially considering how many individuals are in each of your units, that's a huge number of like on the map characters getting a bonus. I think the battle abilities of the orcs are really good. Especially notable is Savages, up to 12% extra damage from all melee infantry in your army. Taking Intimidating Presence and 3 points in Savages is a great idea. I also think Dubois, with its potential for 12 extra attack, that's like 50% increased attack for Goblins, Night Goblins, Orc Boys, and Savage Orc units. And 10 charge bonus. Charging with the Orcs is a great idea too, so they can, because they all do pretty solid damage. It's just landing those hits, and of course charge increases your melee attack and damage by whatever its amount is. So that would be 22 extra attack and 10 extra damage on charge for these units, especially good for the Savage Orcs. In the same vein, Ard lads can do that for Orc Biggins, Savage Orc Biggins, and Black Orcs. The Biggins do lots of damage. They're kind of your armor-piercing go-to, so that's all very good. And Riders is good for all your cavalry, of which you actually have quite a lot of cavalry. Between cavalry and chariots, you have a ton of highly mobile units, which is great because the dwarves do not, which means if you can pry their armies apart, you can definitely crush them. But 10% charge and plus 12 melee attack is no joke. Plus stand your ground, of course, always amazing, but this will double up your melee attack and defense, as well as shore up leadership in a small area around your leader. Lastly, of note, the campaign skills. You can get income bonuses here to whatever you want. You can ambush people. That's okay. Lightning Strike, I always suggest having this if you get this far, at least 1 point. Mob Boss, notable, one of the few ways to reduce the upkeep for your units. Your unit upkeep is rather low, but for someone who's already gotten most of what they want, this could be a really, really good thing. And it's worth it to build up to the Wa path. As fightiness +2 when in foreign territory, this means that you will almost always be generating fightiness, even if you're a defensive army. So if you really need to host a defensive army, you need this skill. Otherwise, when you're doing nothing, your fightiness will drop, and eventually your army will get angry and start killing itself. But with this ability, you will be positive no matter what your army's doing. They can sit wherever they feel like and build up Wa. And if you have 17 or more units and you hit 80 points of Wa, you will spawn that additional army. Fightiness is shown here. You start off with 49. It drops by 1 a turn. When you fight, you get a big bonus for winning a battle, and you get a moderate to small penalty for suffering casualties. Your stances raiding camp is really good. This lets you recruit, it lets you replenish, it increases your leadership, your melee defense, your fightiness by +3. Very important to note, this is one of the 2 ways you can get fightiness, either by crushing your enemies or by raiding. And of course the +3 is more than enough to beat out the animosity, which never goes away. You're always losing 1, but if you're raiding, it's a net gain of 2. You can even raid in your own territory to build up fightiness. That's fine. It will, of course, cause obedience and growth problems where you're at, and you won't get money from raiding yourself. Note, you have to have at least half of your movement left to switch into the stance, so perfecting the half move, you'll note as long as 2 of these bars are full, you should be able to switch into the raiding camp whenever you feel like it. But perfecting the half move is good. You can ambush, you can march, you can underway. All solid choices. The way you recruit your other legendary lord, is actually by building the Shaman's Hut. So let's take a look. And he is Slaughter. His Order of Leadership is +5, which is great for holding together those lower morale units or fighting the tougher battles with the high ones. Just make sure not to let him get beat up, as he is not as physically powerful as Grimgor or your other war bosses. He's somewhere in between. Alright, so for one, you'll note that all of your unit recruitments, that is the boars, the beasts, the greenskins, the workshop, and the monsters have a level 4 or a level 5 tier, which means you're going to want to build all of these in provincial capitals, which means you're going to need at least 2 capitals before you can max out everything. Of special note are the Shaman's Hut, which will unlock your other legendary lord when you build it and allows you to recruit Night Goblin or Orc Shamans. Leaders of your armies can be Goblin Great Shamans or Orc War Bosses. If you go with the Great Shaman, then you don't need another Goblin Shaman as their spells are exactly the same, making the Orc Shamans a little more of a bonus unless you're going like pure War Boss, in which case you'll want one of each. I think hiring Goblin Great Shamans is fine. The Orc War Bosses are really nice, powerful, smashy, but the versatility, the spells that these guys get are incredible, and it does save you a unit slot. You don't have to put a Night Goblin Shaman hero in there. The Orc Shaman spells, I think, are a little bit better, but they are really, really good. I'll also note that Orc Shamans will let you find additional magical items and construct your buildings cheaper when deployed. Are two things they can do, which are really nice. You can't research until you've built the Goblin Tinkerer bench, so in your capital, make sure that you save room for one of these and build it as soon as possible because research is otherwise free. Goblin Rock Lobbers, also easy to recruit, pretty cheap, and one of your first powerful armor-piercing options, great against dwarves who don't move terribly fast and have to march a long way to get to you. Your other early anti-armor units are Trolls, and that's pretty much it. You have a lot of units that are particularly bad against armor, which are goblins in general, but they can poison and cause, other sorts of havoc. Lots of fast units like the Wolf Riders, Archer Wolf Riders, Wolf Chariot Archers, Spider Archers Cavalry, Spider Cavalry. The Arachnarok Spider is a giant monstrous unit, very tough, lots of health, causes terror and fear, unaffected by terrain, tons of damage, armor piercing, and it has goblins on its back that shoot poisonous ranged ones, plus it causes poison itself. Very powerful unit. It does get eaten up by auto-resolve like most monsters do. The Orc Boar Boys. Here is another early armor piercing weapon. Not a ton of damage compared to other units, but really nice charge bonus. So that's what they are for. Definitely good shot cavalry, kind of like your Reiksguard, except, I mean, poor man's Reiksguard, I suppose, as they do have a good bit of armor. And the Orc Boar Chariot, basically the same thing, really, really high charge bonus. It is just one unit, so it is pretty effective for quite a bit of time, has good leadership, solid armor, lots of damage. And, of course, the Orc Boar Boy Biggins, armor piercing and anti-large with a solid charge bonus. These are your go-to monster killers, troll killers, that kind of stuff. Yeah, you need to expand into some sort of anti-armor. I would suggest the trolls are really quite good, but the Boar Boys, if you want more speed too. The trolls are about 50% faster than most melee units. When it comes to infrastructure, for regional specials, you'll either get cash or some kind of unit enhancement, like +2, like pastures will be +2 boar level, yeah, I think it's like +2 boar unit levels and cheaper boar unit recruitment. Or it'll be like money for gemstones. It'll just be like gold mines everywhere because you can't actually trade those trade goods, so you'll get some other form of benefit. Straight up cash or something to enhance your units. Otherwise, cash, pile of shiny stuff you can build everywhere and should, as it's cheap and effective. The growth is great. Casualty replenishment rate is a big boon for this faction, as you need to get back into the fight as swiftly as possible. So sitting around doing nothing and replenishing your units, you want to go as quickly as possible. Plus it's cheap, and the growth bonus is high. So pop these up wherever you have a spare space. Lastly, obedience can be a problem. You're going to need boss tints pretty much everywhere. Pleasantly, they'll also reduce vampiric and chaos corruption by quite a bit. Level 2 is really nice because it unlocks the Goblin Big Boss, which is your assassin type unit. And level 3 boss camp, only available in the capital, so make sure to build one of these in the capital because it increases your ability to recruit Goblin Big Bosses. The Shaman's Hut, you don't need to go a higher level than this to increase your Shaman capacity, but the Shaman's Hovel will give 4 extra ranks and increase your global and local recruitment capacity by 1, which is huge. It's crazy how many units you can produce at the end of the game once you've built 2 or 3 of these. But you really only effectively need 1 of these to recruit high-level shamans right off the bat, if that's what you're going for. The corruption, that's up to you when that's going to be necessary. But yeah, number of shamans, but this is quality of shaman, so have at least 1 hovel. Plus, when you build this, of course, you'll get access to that other legendary hero. So let's talk about tech. To research anything, you have to build the Goblin Tinkerer bench. So make sure to rush that in your first capital. And then the bonuses here are all pretty good. +5 leadership for all orc units, +5 for all goblin units. Big and bullies is really quite good. Big lever, reload time reduction for artillery, combos really nicely with this particular technology. Big Goblin Rock Lobber, 15% more range, reload time reduced by 35%, plus 10% reduction here is crazy good. Goblin Rock Lobbers are cheap, easy to spam, and pretty effective. Also armor piercing, right? So you can get a lot out of them with these particular researches. The Goblin Doom Diver you have to unlock before you can build one. It does have a guided projectile. It is less, it deals less armor piercing damage by a significant amount than the Rock Lobber, so make sure you use it against the right enemies. These techs require the second tier, the Goblin Workshop. The big lever is the last one that requires the Tinkerer's Bench. Of special note, Enormous Loot Cart plus 10% is the only plus 10% rating and battle loot is the only economic research there is. Arachnarok Spider's really freaking good. Massive Choppas plus 10% orc weapon strength, really good. Strap-on gear, armor plus 10 for all infantry, armor plus 10 for all cavalry. Otherwise, everything is kind of, you know, it's a solid, every single tech is solid. I would probably go straight for Arachnarok Spider. If you're using the artillery, maybe straight for the big Goblin Rock Lobber, or the Enormous Loot Cart. Strap-on gear, really, really good, especially with your Savage Orcs. So, one special note, there is the Southern Badlands here. These 4 regions let you recruit a special kind of orc, the Savage Orc. You can have, basically, it's savage versions of all of the basic orc units here. Orc Boys, I think Savage Orc Error Boys, Savage Orc Biggins, Savage Orc Boar Boys, and Savage Orc Boar Boy Biggins. The Savage Orcs have about 30 less armor. So instead of 55, they'd have 25 armor. But they have 20% physical resist and frenzy. Frenzy being, I think, +8 melee attack and +4% charge, as well as immunity to psychology, like fear and terror. And they have a slightly increased charge bonus and a seriously reduced defense bonus, making them all really good shock troops, that is, crashing in the enemy and then maybe pulling back out or finishing them off. And you can only get them by controlling at least 1 territory down in the Southern Badlands. So this area kind of should be a priority for you. As a matter of fact, if you look at your your victory objectives, you have to crush all the other orcs and take over. So I highly suggest kind of having maybe one army with a wad that just crushes other orcs around you while you fend off everyone else early in the game. You really just want to consolidate your orkiness and then start taking out other people, especially because you need time to build up to good anti-armor units to fight those dwarves. Alright, so diplomacy-wise, you can confederate with other orcs. Try it against really friendly orcs that have a low number of settlements, and make sure to build those the boss tents to keep the obedience in check, because when you confederate, it is a big obedience hit everywhere. Otherwise, you'll just be crushing through the game with your giant waz. The waz are super solid. Also, if you don't know how banners work, you have a banner, you take it, you drag it to an appropriate unit. That unit gets the bonus. Really nice. So let us go ahead and take a little look at how fightiness works. Nice, nice. So here we're getting 18 points for a battle won. Note that our casualties kind of mitigate that benefit. So if you control the fights yourself, and you can do better on the casualty side, you can actually increase your fightiness by quite a bit every time. I will note there's another army here. You can get in some serious trouble trying to tackle both these guys at once. Yeah. And of course, you want to perfect the half move into raiding camp stance. Alright guys, that's it for a primer on the Greenskin faction. Lots of fighting, channeled aggressiveness, lots of units with the waz popping up all the time. You want to make sure you get up to that 80 fightiness, 17 unit limit in as many armies as possible, and you can either attack or raid to increase your fightiness. And of course, once you hit that limit, they will spawn right next to you, and you can tell them where to go, or they can just follow you around. Manipulating the waz is a whole video unto itself, but it's really pretty intuitive, and they do a decent job. So, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you learned something or just had fun, then give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. And until next time, my friends, farewell.